morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are at. I hope you're having a fantastic day. It's SoulSaint here, and I've been asked multiple times about my composition and how I've built it up in favor of being able to not only farm stage 10 of Fire Knight hard, but do it very, reasonably fast. I will say that the builds that I'm going to show you today are not going to be fully developed teams. They're basically, for the most part, they do the job, they get everything done, but there is overhead, which is a good thing. So we're going to show you guys some things that will help you out along the way that you can consider as you're progging and doing your own thing in this environment, for lack of better words. But with that being said, let's break it down. The first thing we're going to talk about is priority positioning. So I do have Mikage in the lead role, which gives us a little bit additional accuracy. It's not so much for that, but it is important to note that there's going to be a reason why the positioning is the way it is. And then following up after that, we have Lanathro, which will then be followed up with Kaimar, and then the two last G-Nuts. And I have G-Nut number 2, which is the one with the highest blessing in the very, very last roll. That last part for the G-Nuts don't really matter too much, but there is some value behind them being in the later portion of this team versus being in the front side of it. So, with that being the case, the reason why is this. When you get to the boss fight, we do rely upon two ally attackers. In this case, is Mikage or Lanathro. And the way it goes is that when one person does their ally attack, they go in priority positioning. So when you get through with your two ally attacks, and towards the end of it, they will be the final ones going through. So if they pop the shield open, their last couple of hits will also reduce the turn meter of the boss, making positioning kind of a lot more valuable in that regards. Outside of that, though, they can kind of be in whatever position you want. But the main thing is you want to keep them towards the tail ends, which is why you see them on the rear end of our positioning. Now, with that being said, I'm also going to show you something else here too in terms of things to keep in mind and in terms of the builds. In terms of area bonuses, some key areas that I actually improved upon were my speed, obviously, as well as my ignore percent defense, my crit damage for output, and then, of course, accuracy. The way I look at it is that if you have your speed and your accuracy facilitated, your build's a little bit more easy for you to inject damage, and then subsequently adding more damage also makes it a little bit more better. Now, this can also be improved upon by adding a little bit more on the stat development side for the G-Nuts getting their defense, and, of course, attack for Kaimar and Mikage, and then, of course, actually HP for Lanathro. So that could definitely be an area where once we add more resources towards it, we can actually get a little bit more value out of our team and do a little bit more damage, right? So I'm going to go ahead and show the run. I'm going to slow it down in between the waves and just kind of give you guys some consensus here. Before I do that, though, I am going to note that my Mikage does not shift forms. I'm just brute forcing this with damage. So her build is at 359 speed. No aura to give her any additional speed there, so it's 359. The key thing that I want to let you guys know, I think it's around 357, 358. If memory serves me correctly, it's around like 357.15. There is a mechanic that works within the boss where he goes at a speed of 250. By going at that speed range, you'd be able to get an additional tick of turn meter, which actually allows you to kind of project yourself ahead. That is something important to keep in mind for whoever you're going to have in there. You want at least one person up there with it. I so happen to have my Mikage in there. She actually has some decent accuracy also if you wanted to go down that route of maybe round 1 and 2 going in and controlling the wave with like stuns and adding weaken for maybe some more damage. It could be a case. I actually do like her Silken Snare in through most of the fight because it does do a lot of damage, believe it or not. Throughout round 1 and 2. So you'll see that I don't metamorph, so I have that turned off, and I also don't use the ally attack because we're going to need it pretty quickly in the beginning of round 3, which is when we're fighting the boss. So I have round 1 and round 2 turned off, and pretty much I have the Silken Share up whenever they want to. She wants to use it, and then in round 3, she's going to go ahead and use her A1-1 as a priority, and then her A2 would be the next thing afterwards. You really won't see her use her A2 in round 3 because it's pretty much going to be ally attack with the G-Nuts, then they go and the G-Nuts do their big hits, and then it's a reset by Kaimar into another rotation of ally attacks into another set of hits, and the boss is pretty much dead. That's that's the ultimate goal of what we're trying to achieve here. So I also followed it up with the next fastest, which is going to be Lanathro. I'm trying to keep him roughly close to like the 300 range. I did get him at 298. He's also in a damage build, pretty much a little bit of crit damage, a little bit of crit damage, but mostly the main two focuses here is primarily speed. I will not lie. One of the things you're going to want to make sure you're able to do is put out enough damage output to really secure getting the waves down. So having some damage implemented from everybody does play an important part. Same thing with Lanathro as a Mikage. We pretty much just avoid using his ally attack through round 1 and round 2 because we're going through the waves pretty quickly and it won't be up by the time we get to the boss. But when we get to the boss, that's the first thing we're going to want to use. So we prioritize that on round 3, turn it off for round 2, and let the rest go. Kaimar, on the other hand, he actually does not reset at all during the first 2 waves, so that's the only thing we want to keep off. But outside of that, though, his Abyssal Gaze, believe it or not, in the build that I have him in, is actually not too bad. He's in a damage build with 253 speed, and then pretty much 285 crit damage and 5k attack. Not too bad. Believe it or not, we want him to be slower than the G-Nuts, which are going to go at a 275 speed. That means that their base speed is 255. We do this because not only is it good for other areas of the game, like I have a speed Sand Devil team. If you haven't checked that video out, we actually have it available on the YouTube side in our videos, so definitely go check that out. But pretty much the main thing is just keeping him damage-oriented build, and at the end of the rotation, when it comes to the ally attacks in the boss fight into the G-Nuts, he finishes it off with a reset, which resets everybody's ability, but it also gives turn meter, and this is where his value is very strong compared to any other resetter in the game. Now, that 20% is played in mind because it is a tight shell that we're playing off of in terms of our rotation, so just keep that in mind if you're looking to maybe include some other champions in there as well. I already showed it earlier too as well. We keep the A3 off on both G-Nuts, and you're going to pretty much see a rinse and repeat across the board for round 2 and round 1. For the G-Nuts, it's pretty much we prioritize the A2 whenever possible because it's good AoE damage. And then, of course, it does add weaken to the play, which means that everybody else also benefits from it. And then, of course, in round 3, this is where it gets a little bit important. I have both of them going at 275. The one that has the less blessing actually opens up with his A1 first, and then I have the one that doesn't with the A3 first. So what happens is ally attack, G-Nut opens up. Sometimes there's a little bit of a difference there. I could consider dropping like the faster or the one that's going to immediately open up with the A3. You could probably do 1 speed lower than that, and that'll work just fine. I kept him exactly at 255 because I didn't want to rebuild one of them. That's all it is. But basically, whoever would be the fastest amongst your G-Nuts would have to open up with the A1. This is a safety net just to give you a little bit more breathing room with the turn meter when you crack open. By this point, though, the shield should be fully open. So some ways that could be affected is the amount of phantom touches you have, so just keep that in mind. But by this point, the first A1 from the fastest G-Nut should basically have the boss open, and you get a little bit of a turn meter reduction. Then followed up afterwards, you have G-Nut number 2. Start off with this first set of A3s, which means that at this point, you should be a little bit lower than 30% because the extra damage that you get on top of him doing his 30% should also be crit capped. As you can obviously see, we have like a lot of crit damage and a reasonable amount of defense for both of our G-Nuts here. The goal is to make sure you're getting your full 10% each round. So that's where that ignore percent defense comes into play, and the extra crit damage and the area bonuses plays a very important part. And then, of course, the build itself. After that, you're going to have Kaimar go in. He's going to do his A3, which is going to reset everybody, and it's going to be a rinse and repeat. At that point, the G-Nuts are going to both do their A3s, and that should be the end of the round. So let's go ahead and show you a breakdown of it. I'm going to do it in non-Super Ray mode, and we're going to slow it down here a little bit just to show you some things that we would watch out for. Pretty much here, when we start off this wave here, one thing I'm going to note is the flicker shot that you just saw from Lanathro is nothing to scoff at. I was actually very surprised at his damage output, and you can kind of see it as we're going along. The A3 or the A2, and of course he's also a single. His A1 is an AOE from Kaimar, does a lot of damage. So we're getting a lot of spread here. And then after the A2s that we've gotten from the G-Nuts, they're going to come in and they're going to do a couple extra A1s. We're pretty much clearing the wave out pretty fast, right? You could kind of tell, like with the poisons in mind, she's not going to get a turn. She's going to die right after this. This is the only issue where I would say here, and we're going to take a pause here, where one of them gets a turn. It's not that big of a deal because they're just putting the debuff spread on, but it is something to note that if you had more damage output on your team, this would be less of an issue. Where it's going to be really important at is right here in Wave 2, which is the hardest part about this, because controlling Riho is important, as well as the rest of the teams, particularly the Timisias, because they actually do stuns as a part of their kit, and that could really destroy your team comp. Also, controlling Rio could be a very important case because she likes to throw that ability where she does like a lot of debuffs, and it actually does do quite a decent amount. But we're going to go and let it roll. It's going to be the same thing. We're going to be using a lot of AoE damage and just trying to get as much out as we can. As you can obviously see, we got the flicker shot out without weaken, and it's already doing a good like 10 to 15% of everybody's health, which is ridiculous, right? So we're cycling into our abilities again. You're going to see AoE after AoE going to compile on top of that. We are getting kind of close here, but with the nukes that we're putting down, we keep everybody down. And then also a bonus caveat is because his A2 on Kaimar sleeps, Rio doesn't get a chance. So the first iteration of debuffs, which you're going to get off of your G-Nuts, is going to get cleansed by her. he's going to come in with that sleep afterwards, which kind of locks it in. Now, if you have a poison on her, then that might be a bit of an issue because it'll wake her up and she'll get a turn. The flicker shot from Lenothro's A2 actually keeps him alive. It's a good safety net there. But now we're at the boss fight. We're going to be able to see the ally attacks go into play. We're going to have to speed up a little bit here so we can kind of pick the pace up. But basically, it's going to throw the G-Nuts in there along with the rest of the team. We're going to throw him in there again. And he's pretty much almost going to be fully down already, if not already cracked open. Now, like I said before, your Phantom Touches could apply this. I actually just recently got my most recent blessing on the second G-Nut. So I did slap on Phantom Touch, which did open this up a bit faster. So it's not mandatory. It's complimentary for that. And I want to make sure you guys are aware of that. So I throw this extra A1 in there as a safety net, and then we start our actual damage application. If you have high blessing counts and you have high Phantom Touch procs, you can actually just open up with him immediately going into his A3, which could speed up the run quite a bit. But for the most part, the reset from Kaimar allows the ally attackers to inject the G-Nuts again, bringing his turn meter back down, and then we have the last rotation of his A3s, which will secure the kill, and it'll secure the run. On average, I've gotten anywhere between like 1 minute to a minute and 30, roughly. Sometimes you have some outliers where it takes a little bit longer to clear the wave out, but for the most part, it's pretty good. The main thing here is that you have the speed tune in place, you have the speed to acquire it, and then you have the damage to complement getting through the waves. That is the key thing. After that, it's just a matter of the rotation going through, and you have everything you're looking for. I'm going to show you one more time here, just to show you with a full team, fully set up, and see how fast it goes. This is really good for champions if you're trying to find a place for like your extra ally attackers that you may have access to. I also, maybe we can see it like a chance where like we don't fully clear out everybody, and then both of the Venuses get a chance here. It doesn't normally happen because of our damage output, thankfully, but like I said, that one extra Venus does get their chance, and it sometimes could be something to consider if you are using maybe not Lenothro, for example. I will say on record, both Mikage and Lenothro are not mandatory for this. I do think I would recommend Lenothro as a priority pick for one of the ally attackers because his A2 does a lot of damage. Mikage is also really good too from a complementary standpoint, so you'll get to see a lot of her value kind of shine here quite a bit. I think she's really cool. Honestly, I built her because she's really cool, and sure enough, we're getting in there. 50 seconds on the turn clock right now. We're already at the boss. Crank it down on the shield. We did get a couple Phantom touch shots, so that's something to keep in mind here. It may crack open the shield a little bit faster. We ended up getting one, so we didn't get the benefit proc that we had. That extra A1 there to give us that 76% where he's at by the time we get to the G-Nuts A3, the first initial one, gives us plenty of space to inject the rest of the team to basically bring the turn meter all the way back down. And then it's pretty much clear sailing. At this point, if you don't kill the boss after the next two A3s from the G-Nuts, what I would say is that you need to prioritize getting your stats improved on them so that they can get through. The main goal you're going to want to hit is make sure you get those A3s to do that 10% each time. So that's 3, 6, 9. In general, if you have the extra Phantom Touches, then it'll be 3, 6, 9, 120. 120% of the boss's effective basic HP. And then, of course, you got to think about this, too. The extra ally attacks also give you a little bit more damage output as you're going in there, too, so that may give you that extra 10% to give you along the way. And that's kind of what you're seeing here. The extra poisons that the boss got to turn will help kill him. The extra damage that we're getting from pretty much the other three, in addition to that, is giving you the output. And you can see, a minute 25, not too bad. Anywhere between that, I honestly think that, and I'm going to show you their gear here in just a second, I honestly think we can even bring it down even more. My best so far, and I did it today, as a matter of fact, was a minute and 18 seconds. And there's a little bit of RNG elements that come into it. Maybe I'm critting a little bit harder than usual or something around those lines. But allow me to show you our team's build, so you can kind of see exactly that there's so much more room for improvement, right? I'm going to show you a couple of the pieces here. Now, some of them are pretty decent. Like, this weapon is not bad. The helmet, for example, there's no crit rate, there's no crit damage. HP percent doesn't really benefit Mikage. Resistance doesn't benefit Mikage because we're not taking any damage or any CC, so there's no value there, right? But I do have a decent amount of speed. I can actually improve this helmet and get it all the way up ascended to attack, which I'll just do for the video. Screw it, let's do it. We got a little bit extra oils to work with, so get that gives you a little bit more attack right there. So maybe her damage, output improves, right? I'm using a 5-star shield here, which has pretty much the main focus is speed. We do get some accuracy. We do get some crit rate. We do get some crit damage. The main goal is just to get to the stat requirements we're looking for, right? Crit cap. For her, it's like 358 speed. And then, of course, any kind of damage we could do to complement it, right? So that's pretty much the goal there. The gloves, believe it or not, crit rate with defense percent could be re-oiled. We can add some extra speed here. We can add some extra attack here in terms of glyphs. This is going to be really, really funny, and this is where I feel like this really kind of brings the build down to earth in the sense of like, yeah, the speed requirement's there. Don't get me wrong. But if you can hit that, even with like a little bit of damage, it does work, you know? And you can see it. I got attack flat for my chest piece, you know? Defense flat for my oil. The speeds are not even glyphed up, so technically you don't necessarily need triple rolls to make it work as long as you can maybe make up for it with glyphs, right? HP and HP flat, who cares? That's not the stats that we're looking for. Now, I won't lie, these boots are pretty good. You know, speed on speed with crit rate, crit damage, and then attack percent. That's all what we're looking for, right? The HP flat's kind of a throwaway. It's not a big deal. Her ring has attack with attack percent. That's kind of what we're looking for. Crit damage with attack. I got to re-oil this. We can get more crit damage here. And then, of course, I actually took her original piece. She actually had a little bit more damage in her build. But I ended up giving that to somebody else. And then I end up giving her like a double accuracy piece, which actually kind of helps out a little bit on the PvP side. And it's made me be able to flex her in as some options. But remember, that at the end of the day, this build is focused primarily on damage, right? To get the speed that we're looking for and then go for damage, right? So, here's something I'm going to kind of stop and pause real quick. Because of the way my build is designed, and if you pay attention to some of the stat requirements, I'll recommend that you guys like consider this for, depending on where your state of progression, maybe you can do this, but you can't get the extra damage, and that's okay. You can make benefits, and you can make do with another way that she makes a really good candidate for one of the top picks for your ally attackers. I'm going to show you here in just a moment. If you refer to hellhades.com/raid, he has raid/stages tool. He has an area where it kind of gives you like an idea of their stats overall. It's a really good nifty tool to kind of get that. And based off of the way his suggestive stats are, he's looking for a 95% success rate in terms of placing debuffs, which is what you'll see here. If they have a 133, a 95% success rate is at 158 accuracy. That's not really that demanding, right? And even all the way down into the more harder and like the highest stage you can go, it's 158 for across the board for the waves, right? You can get that fairly easy with one accuracy banner or maybe even an accuracy chest. And then if you think about it this way, if you get accuracy from your Great Hall, as well as your area bonuses, that's 80 and 80, that's 160. You're kind of there already, right? So the need for the accuracy isn't too bad. You can maybe do enough to get yourself to a consistent 97%. There's a built-in 3% that's always existing in the game. And what you could do, if you're finding yourself having trouble with consistency with the waves, you can flip her and have her prioritize using her stun or her sleep, which will give you value in terms of controlling the wave. So if you find yourself kind of dying to the wave early on, if you're still progressing to make this team work, you can abuse her second term. And then when you get to the third wave where you're fighting the boss, you could just flip back and then turn on her A3 as a priority. So that would just be an AI setup as long as you meet those stat requirements. So something good to keep in mind when it comes to this being an option for a champion. Remember, she's not mandatory. She's really complementary. So it definitely helps out quite a bit there in terms of control of that wave if you feel like your damage output isn't enough to just brute force, like how you saw me do. So, with that being said, her masteries are kind of in line with what we're looking for as a direction in terms of focus. Pretty much some complementary accuracy. We got Lore Steel and some cooldown resets for that A2 purpose. And then pretty much a little bit of damage down the offense tree. We did round out with War Master. If your build's good enough to maybe all in on an ignore percent defense build, then I would even argue that maybe going down Hell Smasher may not be a bad option to consider. But I don't have the gear like that to do those type of builds inside that set at that speed. So I'm playing it the more healthier route, and I'm just going to go ahead and just rely upon my War Master procs there. But just something to note. Kaimar is in a similar build himself. Now, he actually, because his speeds were a little bit lower, I could do a little bit more damage, so I kind of went down the Helm Smasher route for more true damage, quote-unquote. But even then, I'm still not even rocking. I'm rocking broken sets and whatnot. The main goal was getting my stats and then complementing with as much damage as I get after the fact, right? And look at this. I got an attack percent chest. Now, mind you, his build is going to be a little bit more closer to what I'm looking for, but even then, it's still not perfectly there. Like, I could rework this. I tried a couple times already. The gods are not on my side on this, but I could get a little bit more attack percent there, 20% there to adds up. That's almost like another set of area bonuses, for example, right? Same thing with my my boots. More attack, that's 40% there. So it adds up over the course of it, and I just kind of, yes, it may look overwhelming and whatnot. I need you to understand that, like, Fire Knight is a late game, end game focus. So at this point of the game, you pretty much want to have an established account to be able to acquire these stats. But even with that being said, someone who is still progressing in this game is still doing his thing, you can kind of see that the value is there as long as you attack it from multiple avenues. And there's still plenty of room for improvement. Take that for what it's worth. We did go Phantom Touch with him. We still hit the speed requirements like you saw in the original AI setup. The Masteries here, kind of the main thing I want to show you guys here for the most part. It's actually not really unrealistic to be able to acquire these results. Same thing, accuracy, because you do want accuracy to be able to land his A1 freeze. And then some complementary offensive stats. I even thought about maybe going down the route of extra crit damage for more stat bloat. Maybe Helm Smasher if I can ever get these guys into some Savage builds. I probably won't right now for the foreseeable future. There's other champions I want to give that to. So they do the job, though. They pretty much get the job done. And as you can obviously see, I got plenty of pieces that are not oiled or finished up that could be improved upon. So the sky's the limit. Sky's the limit. G-Nuts, I think, on both, of course, have the exact same mastery set. So if you want to pause the video and take a look at this and use this as a reference point for both G-Nuts, you're more than welcome to. Like I said, the Masteries at this point, because of the damage output and the way that the team is fine-tuned, the Phantom Touches aren't a hard requirement anymore, but they are complementary to help you get into the shield a little bit faster, give you a little bit more turn meter reduction, which means that when it gets to Kaibar, it's not tight. Even before that, though, I didn't have any blessings on one of the G-Nuts, and I was still using Soul Reap on this one, and it was perfectly fine. So just keep that in mind. Lenothril, in the same ballpark. I did give him a little bit more loving recently today just because I had hit some stats that I was looking for. But still, room for improvement. There's a lot of areas that are not glyphed or oiled up all the way. And his stats are still pretty solid for the most part. You know, the main thing is just hitting that stat requirement for speed first and then just getting as much as you can. If I can get even more damage on him, remember, he's a hitter, especially with that A2, that flicker barrier. It's really, really good. It's really, really good. His masteries are a little bit different. He does have a lot that complements down going the tree of getting steadfast, but it's the same concept, getting War Master, some masteries along the way that are going to help you kind of get more damage out across the board. You can pause and look at to your reference there. I did go Phantom Touch on him for the extra proc just to get into the shield a little bit more. Like I said, I'm at the point now where I don't think it's mandatory. It is complimentary. But I will suggest like maybe at least one or two of your ally attackers could have it on. Particularly probably like the Kaimar and maybe Mikage since they scale off of attack anyways, and that's the way Phantom Touch works. That should help you get through the ways through the boss's shields for the most part there. And then, of course, he's also in that same build. The extra cooldown on the reset from Cycle of Magic is more so for the flicker shot there on his A2 to give you a little bit more uptime on it so you can get it out more. If it does proc, great. If not, you've seen it happen where it doesn't proc, so you still get your output the way you're looking for it. And that's pretty much it. I actually think there's a lot of overhead there, and I think as I improve my builds, I'll probably be able to bring this team down to maybe a minute 10, maybe even close towards a minute. And yeah. You'll be able to farm and enjoy this 3x Savage event that we're in the middle of. Anyways, if you have any questions, feel free to comment below and ask them out. We'll try to help you out as much as possible. I do also offer a takeover service in case you're interested in getting this done for your team and you may not have the time or you know, you may be concerned about being able to facilitate some things. We do offer that service here. We'll leave that in the description below too as well for you to refer to if you ever want to sign up for a takeover. We do offer that as a service. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think. Are you going to pull a team that's very similar to this? Do you like the speeds? Maybe you got something faster. Let us know. We're all ears. And with that being said, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and always, always remember, stay ascended.